I always say about this gospel that if this had happened today, Jesus would have been an Amber Alert, missing for 3 days. This feast of the Immaculate Heart of Mary is a good moment to reflect upon what is an Immaculate Heart. When we use that phrase, the Immaculate Heart of Mary, what do we mean by that heart? Well, as a pseudo-example, we can perhaps take a moment to meditate of kind of reaching into our own hearts and pulling our heart out, looking at our heart in our hand, and looking at all those things that infect our heart. So we look at that envy that we have, and jealousy, and we begin to pull that strand of jealousy out of our heart, that strand of envy out of our heart, and wash it out of there. And then we look at our lust, and we pull the lust out, and wanting to use people for our own selves, so we pull all that lust out of our heart, and we wash that clean of the lust. And then we look at the sloth that's there, our laziness, and we pull that laziness out, that asedia, we pull it all out, we wash that clean, and we pull out that strand of wrath and anger that comes with revenge, and it pulls all those other little tentacles with it of hatred and so forth, and anger and rage, and pull all that out of there. We pull out all that filth that's in there of gluttony and how much we just, that overindulgence. We pull that gluttony out of there. And then we get out that bit of pride that's so ingrained, and we pull that pride out of there as well. And it takes a little extra work to get the pride out, a little WD-40, right? Because that pride is just stuck in there, right? So we wash these 7 deadly sins, and we pull them out of the heart, and we have now a different heart than we had before, didn't we? But not just leaving it empty of these 7 deadly sins, we fill it with faith. We fill it with hope. Where there was greed, we put in justice, or we put in temperance. We fill it with the 7 beautiful virtues of God, of faith, hope, charity, justice, temperance, fortitude, prudence. So we fill the heart with those virtues. And then we allow those virtues to begin to grow, and they begin to produce these beautiful fruits of charity, of joy, of peace, kindness, goodness, the beautiful fruits of modesty, self-control, the beautiful fruits of the Holy Spirit that begin to grow within the heart and mature within the heart. And then we pull out that one last thing of concupiscence, that inclination to sin. We take that out of the heart, that inclination to sin. And we have this beautiful heart, right, that is devoid of sin, that's devoid of the ugliness of sin, that is filled with the beautiful virtues of God, filled with the fruits of the Spirit. Now I'd ask you, is the heart that has all that ugly stuff removed from it, now filled with all the good things of God, is that heart more human or less human? We would say that's more human, right? When we look at sin, we see that as a degradation to our humanity. Sin is not something that's natural to the human person. It's against our human person. It's against our human nature. It makes us actually less human. And so when we have a heart that is free of those 7 deadly sins, and those 7 deadly sins have been replaced by the 7 virtues, and those 7 virtues have matured in the beauty of the full 12 fruits of the Holy Spirit, what we have is a pure, beautiful, immaculate heart. A truly human heart. A heart that truly lives up to its creation because it bears the image and likeness of the ever-living God. Now suppose in the heart of that heart, in the very center of it, we dethrone the unholy trinity of our hearts. The unholy trinity of me, myself, and I, right? That's the unholy trinity that seems to take the throne of our heart quite a bit, which creates that selfishness, that self-centeredness that allows those 7 deadly sins to grow and all their little evil children, right? So we dethrone the unholy trinity, and in our hearts, we enthrone the most blessed Trinity. We allow the Father, the Son, and Holy Spirit to truly reign over our hearts, to take full control of our hearts, to guide our hearts in how we should love and how we should choose and how we should act and how we should speak and how we should think, to allow the Holy Trinity to guide us in the way of living in this life, in how we think, how we speak, how we respond, how we react, how we act and what we do, what we don't do, what we withhold from doing. If we truly gave the Holy Trinity that throne in our heart that we like to keep, to dethrone the unholy Trinity, allow the Holy Trinity to have that throne, how beautiful our hearts would be. And this is what the Immaculate Heart of Mary was. The truly human heart, the most human heart. To say that Our Lady was conceived without sin is not to say she was inhuman, is to say she was most human, because our heart so beautifully, so perfectly reflected the beauty and the glory of the most Holy Trinity in the image and likeness in which it was created, in which all of our hearts were created. But because she had that beautiful grace of the Immaculate Conception, her heart was able to reach that perfection. Now God, by an extraordinary grace, provided this for her so that she could be not just the mother of God, but that she could also be the mother of us all. She is not just the mother of God. She is also our mother, and is with that pure, immaculate, beautiful heart where all 7 virtues are at full capacity, where every single one of the 12 fruits of the Holy Spirit have reached full maturity. In that heart where the Blessed Trinity reigns supreme, devoid of any selfishness, any self-centeredness, devoid of any concupiscence. That heart of hers not only loves God, but loves us, the rest of her children. It is with this pure, immaculate heart that she loves us and desires our salvation. She intercedes for us constantly from the glory of the kingdom of heaven because she is our mother. It is not just a queen who is interceding for us. It is our mother who is the queen who is interceding for us. It's not just the mother of God interceding for us. It is God's mother and our mother interceding for us. This beautiful immaculate heart, where she holds us so tenderly in her heart, because she is the Immaculate Conception, because her heart does have the fullness of all graces. Her heart's able to be open to receive into it the full and perfect love for each and every single human person on the face of this earth, and every soul that is to come. God has so expanded her heart that it's open to every single person, both the greatest of saints and the worst of sinners. She loves them all with a mother's heart. Just as you mothers could love your children who are so wonderful and good and just so obedient, and love those kids that are just not so much. A mother doesn't see the drug addict, she sees a child. She sees her son, her daughter. And so Our Lady doesn't see the sin addict. She sees her son, her daughter. With this beautiful, perfected, maternal love, she sees her children. And her heart, because it is the Immaculate Heart, it is like a palace where everyone is welcomed into her heart and is loved there. Saint and sinner alike. Every single human person. Her heart loves with a mother's love, whether they know it or not. Whether they're aware of her presence or not. Whether they care or don't care, she cares. Just as you know, some of your children can care less about what you think, and some really care about what you think. You still love them with the fullness of your mother's heart. So our Heavenly Mother, she loves each of her children, whether they care what she thinks or not. They can't stop her from loving them, because her Immaculate Heart can't stop her from loving them. because it is so filled with that love and grace of God. This is the beauty of our Heavenly Mother. This is the beauty of this woman whom God has given to us from the cross to be our Queen. The beauty of her heart that was pierced for love of us. The beauty of that heart that she offered in union with Christ's heart on Calvary, when she offered herself with him for us, that we might receive the new life in God. What a beautiful mother we have. There's so many little stories about Mary and her powerful intercession. So many to tell about it. We could sit here forever telling story after story after story. You know what's fascinating? The difference between Jesus and Mary. They both love beautifully, but Jesus is God. She's not God. At some point, Jesus, because he's God, has to be just. And he has to rain down justice as God. It's just the reality of who he is. Our Lady, though, she doesn't have to be just. I mean, she's just. But she can always be a merciful mother. Because she doesn't judge us at the end of time. Jesus has to judge us. She doesn't have to. So she can always be that intercessor for us. She can always be that merciful mother to us. She can always be that tender, loving mother for us. Padre Pio loved to tell the story of these people who would come to heaven. As they get to the gates of heaven, and St. Peter would say to them, look in the book and go, I'm sorry, you're not here in the book. Go. And then later, Jesus is walking around heaven and sees all these people in heaven. And he says to St. Peter, what are these people doing in heaven? They're not in the book. And St. Peter says, I keep turning them away from the front door, and your mother lets them in the back door. Padre Pio's favorite joke. St. Bonaventure tells the story of a monk who was living a terrible life. He was a terrible monk. And yet, no matter what, every night before going to bed, he'd pray his 100 Hail Marys, the rosary, even though he was a terrible monk. And as he stood before God in judgment, Jesus went through his sins and pronounced the sentence of hell. And as he made the sentence, Jesus, Blessed Mother came forward and said to Jesus, Son, give me one drop of your blood. Obedient to his mother, Jesus stretched out his hand, and from his wounded hand squeezed, and a drop of blood came into her hand. And she walked over to the scales, and on the scales was the man's sins like this, and his virtues were up here. And so he was waited. And Our Lady took the drop of Jesus' blood and put it on the scale up here, and it went this way. And she walked him into heaven. Now that was a cute little story he told, but it was the fact that Our Lady intercedes, even at the moment of judgment. There's one last story I will tell you, which I think is so beautiful. I saw this priest on EWTN talking about how he was not a very good priest. His parish loved him, but they didn't know how bad he was. Got into a car accident and had a near-death experience, broke his neck. Months later, got back to his parish and remembered what happened during the time of the accident, where he was standing before Christ in judgment. And Christ went through all of his sins. I should mention that while this priest was dying in that near-death experience, he was trying to pray the Hail Mary, but couldn't even remember it. And so as he was standing before Christ in judgment, Jesus was going through all his sins. And every time that Jesus mentioned his sins, he said, yes, Lord, I know. Yes, Lord, I know. He said, when you're standing before Christ in judgment, there's nothing you can say. There's no excuses. When Jesus got to the end of his sins, he said, you have been a priest for 15 years, and for 15 years you served yourself. My sentence is hell. And he said, yes, Lord, I know. And at that moment, he heard another voice. Our Lady says, son, give him one more chance. She said, Mother, he's been a priest for 15 years. He's had plenty of chances. And Our Lady said, give him to me. And that's when he was revived. Our Lady, at that moment, saved this priest's life. Saved him from the fires of hell, simply because he was trying to utter her name at the moment of death. She heard her son, and she responded,
That's what we mean when we speak of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, a mother who truly loves us and will never abandon us, even at the moment of judgment. May God bless you and Mary keep you.